Whenever we talk about growing a country's economy, the conversation almost always goes to the big stuff, right? We're talking interest rates, trade balances, giant infrastructure projects. But what if the real secret, the actual engine of growth, isn't out there in the macroeconomy, but right here, inside the individual companies that make it all run? And it makes sense why policymakers take that 30,000-foot view. From up there, the economy looks like this big machine with levers you can pull and dials you can turn. And look, that big picture thinking is absolutely crucial for stability, but it leaves this huge, nagging question unanswered. Why do some countries just take off while others get stuck, even when their top-level policies seem pretty much the same? Well, the answer is because, at the end of the day, a national economy is really just the sum of all its companies. It's that simple. If your companies are inefficient, your entire economy is going to be inefficient. The bedrock of national productivity is the productivity of its firms. Which brings us to a really fundamental question. We have this tendency to think of management as a soft skill, something kind of fuzzy, hard to pin down. But what if it's not? What if the way we actually run our companies is one of the single most powerful drivers of national wealth? Let's find out. So, for the longest time, economists were kind of stuck on this. I mean, how on earth do you measure good management? It seemed impossible. But that all changed when researchers like Nicholas Bloom and John Van Reenen came up with the World Management Survey. They figured out a way to turn this fuzzy idea into cold, hard data. So how'd they do it? Well, they didn't ask these vague questions like, hey, are you a good boss? No way. Instead, they got super specific about concrete practices. Things you can see here, like how do you actually set targets? How do you track performance? What's your process for managing talent and creating incentives? By scoring companies on dozens of these real-world actions, they built this incredibly powerful tool to measure management quality across the globe. And what they discovered was, well, it was staggering. Just take a look at this chart. It ranks average management scores across dozens of countries, and it's crystal clear. You've got this hierarchy with places like the US and Germany right at the top, and then this long tail of developing nations way, way down at the bottom. The gap we're talking about here isn't just big, it's absolutely massive. And we can actually put a number on this. This table shows how much of a country's productivity gap with the United States can be explained just by these management practices. Just look at that average, 22%. Think about that. Nearly a quarter of the entire productivity gap between rich and poor nations comes down to management. That is a huge piece of the economic puzzle. Okay, so we've got a really strong correlation, right? Better managed firms do better, and countries with better managed firms are richer. But this leads to that critical question, the one that always comes up. What's causing what? Yeah, this is that classic chicken or egg problem. Does good management cause success? Or does success just mean a company can afford to hire good managers? For a long time, nobody really knew for sure. And without a clear answer, it's pretty tough to design policies that actually work. The breakthrough, that real aha moment, came from this incredible experiment in India. Researchers went into a bunch of textile plants to settle this question once and for all, using the gold standard of evidence, a randomized controlled trial. The setup was brilliant in its simplicity. They took a bunch of firms and randomly split them into two groups. One group, the treatment group, got months of free world-class management consulting. The other group, the control group, got nothing. And the results? They were just explosive. The firms that got the consulting, the ones that adopted these modern management practices, saw their productivity go through the roof. Quality shot up, waste plummeted, and profits just soared. It was completely undeniable. And this right here is the crucial takeaway from all of this. This experiment proved that management is not a soft skill, it is a technology. Seriously. Implementing better management practices is just like installing a new, better machine in your factory. It directly causes a firm's output and efficiency to go up. And that insight, honestly, it changes everything. So now that we've established that this management technology works, the next logical question is why it works. To figure that out, we've got to pop the hood and take a look at the internal structure of the firm itself. A really powerful way to think about this comes from a field called organizational economics. It says we should view a company as a nexus of contracts. Now, don't let the jargon fool you. That doesn't just mean a stack of legal papers. It means all the agreements, both formal and informal, that decide who does what, who has the power, and how things actually get done inside a company. This whole nexus idea really boils down to answering these key questions. Who gets to call the shots? Do you trust your people enough to delegate authority down to the front lines? Or does every little thing have to go up the chain of command? The answers to these questions are what define a company's internal operating system and ultimately how effective it can possibly be. And here's where it all connects back to the bigger picture, to the national environment. If a country's legal system can't reliably enforce contracts, firms can't grow. It's that simple. Why? Well, because owners won't delegate authority to middle managers if they can't trust them not to just run off with the profits. They won't outsource parts of their business if they can't enforce a deal. And this keeps firms small and family-run, which stops them from ever scaling up and achieving their full potential. So, okay, let's bring this all back home. If you're a policymaker, say at Cambodia's Ministry of Economy and Finance, what does all this mean for you? If management really is a core technology for growth, what are the levers you can actually pull? Well, here's the first big question to chew on. Governments all over the world subsidize hardware, things like new machinery for factories. But if management is the software technology that makes everything run better, then shouldn't we be helping firms get access to management training and consulting in the same way? Number two, we have got to talk about competition. The data on this is so clear. Nothing makes a company improve its management faster than intense market competition. It's basically shape up or ship out. So we have to ask a tough question. Are any of our current policies, whether it's subsidies or trade rules, actually protecting poorly run firms from the very market pressure that would force them to get their acts together? And finally, we have to turn the lens on ourselves. The government is also a massive organization. So, to pull off a huge, ambitious goal like Vision 2050, the public sector itself needs to be managed brilliantly. Does it have the right incentives, the right monitoring, and the right systems of delegation in place to execute such a complex, long-term vision? So, the main takeaway here is crystal clear. Better management is an incredibly powerful tool. It lets a country squeeze every last drop of potential out of the people and capital it already has. It delivers a massive boost in efficiency. But, and this is a big but, efficiency gains eventually hit a ceiling. To keep growing year after year, decade after decade, an economy can't just get better and better at doing the same old things. It needs new things to do. It needs new ideas. It needs innovation. So, to achieve that kind of indefinite growth, where do those new ideas come from? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into in our next explainer.